It's Friday, obviously, and so I want you to know that I don't just complain about stuff. If something nice happens in my life, I'll talk to you about that as well. And in fact, I got a bunch of really cool stuff in the mail recently. I tell people if you want to send correspondence to me, send it to the P.O. Box. It's in the credits of every single video. And people send me all kinds of cool stuff, not just t-shirts. So I mentioned a while back a story regarding Frank Miller, the artist who drew the Dark Knight series of Batman in the comic book world. And I had a guy contact me, hey, Steve, I'm so happy you talked about Frank Miller. I'd like to send you something as a token of appreciation for all you do there on Lehto's Law. And I said, great, I appreciate that. And I kind of forgot about it. And the other day I got something in the mail, and I opened it up, and there's a letter. And it's from Juan. It says, Steve, as promised, here's the gift I was speaking about. This is a graded copy of Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, #2 by Frank Miller. This is a great grade to have, 9.6 out of 10. The way you talked about Frank's work in the story, I could tell you appreciated the art and what he gave to the comic and pop culture community. So I felt it fitting for you to have a book from that era. I hope this can make its way onto your shelf with all your car stuff, your channels what my family and I listen to on long trips, or coming home from daycare. My 4-year-old son always asks if we're going to listen to a story. He has no idea what's going on, but likes your voice and the lady at the end. Anyway, thanks again for doing my story. Please enjoy the book. Thanks for the great content. Have a great week. Cheers, Juan. And this is a thing of beauty, and it's been graded and sealed into this. So it is, like I said, DC Comics, Dark Knight Returns #2 from 1986. I'm not sure where I can put it on the set just yet because I'm concerned about the glare. But it might replace my YouTube plaque back there, which is quite frankly getting kind of tired. So, but that's cool. That's cool. I collected comic books when I was a little kid. I collected Batman and Superman, and I had a brother who did the Spider-Man thing. So that was the whole debate in our family. Second of all, I got another really cool package in the mail, and accompanied by a letter. And I opened it up, and all this cool stuff falls out. And it says, hello, Steve. We're posted to Bangkok, Thailand, and we are regular viewers. We typically enjoy your program Sunday mornings. We have a lazy Sunday breakfast while enjoying your program. And he goes on to explain about how he and his friends watch my videos, and partly it is simply because they enjoy hearing an American voice speaking American. That's cool. I like that. He says, politics are especially crazy here, and your explanations of American jurisprudence brings them great pleasure, referring to his friends there locally. So he sent in a t-shirt, which I've not worn on camera yet. It's bright white, and I'm not sure if I can wear it on camera without it screwing up the settings. We'll talk about that later. But he did send me a license plate, which is not on the set yet, but will be on shortly. And he said that, by the way, he has an up thing on the back there, just to make sure I catch that, because it would be possible to display this upside down and not know it. But he says that this phonetically spells out Lehto's Law. And I'll have to take his word for it, because it's been a while since I studied this script. So there you go. That'll be on the set shortly. I also did get another plate. Again, I got to do some work back here. I feel really bad. And by the way, from Bangkok, he also sent me this really cool pin from the embassy, which is really cool. So that'll be on the set too, but you might not be able to figure out what that is from a distance, but you know how that goes. And so I get license plates sent to me, and I've got to juggle some back here. But someone sent me this one, and I'll admit, I actually didn't get it at first. I'm so used to CAF as being the first 3 of 4 letters for CAFE, like the CAFE standards, like gas mileage and fuel economy in cars. And at first I thought, oh, they couldn't fit on CAFE sucks. And I realized, oh, civil asset forfeiture sucks. So I'll admit I'm slow on the uptake, as they say. But yeah, this will go on the set shortly also. Another license plate, and I appreciate that. But along with the cool stuff I've been given in the last few days, the last few weeks, I do, of course, have complaints. And one of the things that I've noticed, and this is a recent phenomenon, by the way, this is something that just started happening, at least to where I've noticed it. But several days in a row, I've had someone jump onto a video the second I put it up, and they go, you don't need to watch this video. All he says is, and then they summarize the video in one sentence. So if I do a video that says, mayor of small town arrested for drunk driving, they'll go, you don't need to watch the video. All he says is the mayor of the small town. And he's usually just repeating, and these people, it's probably not the same person, but it could be. It's just repeating the title of the video. And so to tell people that they don't need to watch it, I thought that's kind of strange. And I realized, this is somebody who's just upset, like at the world or something. But I saw that on several of my videos, several days in a row, where you don't need to watch this video. He just tells the story of, and then they put the headline in there. So I don't know what that is. I did the story about how a court has said that an engineer pretending to be a cop was granted qualified immunity by the courts. And that was a dangerous precedent because it was expanding how qualified immunity applies. If it doesn't just apply to cops, but it also applies to people pretending to be cops. I actually got an email from somebody who says, Steve, I generally agree with you, but you missed the point on this one. If the ruling stands, it will expand qualified immunity to non-police. Now, I don't know if people actually don't pay attention to the videos at all, because that was the point of the video. I did, by the way, on the vault, when I put up old vault videos, I try to put the date. I try to remember to put the date in there. By the way, all you got to do is go back and read the copyright at the end and you catch the date there. And I said, I'll try to put the date in the description because I have so many people ask me that. I had a guy actually get mad at me and he goes, Steve, that's not what we're looking for because we need the actual date. The date. Not just the year, the month and the day. And he actually said, I need you to say this video went up March 3rd, 2018, not just 2018. Who keeps track of that? I don't even keep track of that. You keep track of that? I don't. Okay, the Bourne Identity movies, I love them. I think they're great. And I was watching one of them. I forgot if it's the second or the third one. It might be the third one. When they start from the Bourne Identity, and there's in one of the episodes of the Bourne Identity, there's a scene where he's given the address of the Treadstone program in New York City. And I was watching the movie for the 10th time, and I Googled the address just to see what was actually there. And somebody, as a joke, put in Treadstone Research Department on that site and said that's what's there. Just funny. So I screen grabbed that, and I posted it on Facebook, and I said, hey, everybody, watching the Bourne Identity right now, and I just discovered a little Easter egg. Turns out if you look up the address on Google, they list it also as the Treadstone Research Department. Within 5 minutes, 2 different friends of mine on Facebook took the screen grab that I put up, put it on their page, and goes, look what I just discovered. One guy actually said, I was just watching the playoff game. When the game ended, I switched over to the Bourne Identity. I saw this address and I decided to look it up. Which, by the way, doesn't make any sense because I was watching it on demand. It was not on cable at that moment in time. And the odds of that happening, you have to admit, are too astronomical to possibly be real. Okay? So if you see something funny, you don't have to steal it for it to be funny. You can pass it along and say, hey, look, this is something that somebody pointed out. I think it's funny. But if you feel the need to steal jokes like that, I don't know about that. And then finally, I got to tell you that I did this story about in Michigan where a township was concerned that somebody had clutter on their property, but they couldn't see it because it had privacy fences around their property. And the township was convinced that people had blight inside their property, but they couldn't see it. So they hired a company to bring in a drone and overfly the property and then use that drone evidence to file civil charges against the couple who owned the property. And it's gone back and forth a bunch of times between the trial court, the Court of Appeals, and the Michigan Supreme Court. And the Michigan Supreme Court said that the way the law is right now, to overfly somebody's property without a warrant, especially if you do it at low altitude, the Fourth Amendment that talks about searches and seizures without warrants would not apply in a civil action brought by the township, but it would apply in a criminal action. That's what the Michigan Supreme Court said, and they were citing the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the interesting thing is, if the word drone appears anywhere in a story, these guys come out of the woodwork, and it's like the Tesla people, but not quite as militant. And there'll be all kinds of comments going, why are you ripping on drones? What's wrong with drones? Oh, knee-jerk response to drones. No, they're part of the story. I was just telling the story that's what's going on. But I've also talked before about how you own a piece of property. You don't just own the square, the flat plane on the face of the planet. You actually own up also. That's why you can build a house, for instance, on your property. You own the space directly above that property. And yes, it goes all the way to outer space in theory. And don't say, but Steve, then the lines would be angled out. Yes, and they do that too. So for some odd reason, people will hear something, and 10 seconds later, they'll say something as if 1,000 years of case law hasn't addressed it. But I've gone far afield already. A guy sent me a note, and he goes, Steve, you and the courts are completely wrong on this. This bit about drones invading your airspace and doing an unlawful search. He goes, the Supreme Court has already ruled on this. Well, the funny part is he started by saying you and the courts are wrong. But yet one of the courts that he's saying is wrong is the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has said this. He said the Supreme Court's already ruled that the police can go over your property in an airplane and look down, and what they can see with their own eyes is plain view, and it's the open fields doctrine. And he's trying to explain this stuff to me as if I don't know this stuff. And he goes, so obviously they can fly a drone over your property all day long because the FAA owns your airspace. You don't own the airspace. He said, since the FAA owns the airspace above your property, the government can hover a drone over your property all day long without a warrant, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's get back this idea that the FAA owns the airspace over your property. They don't. Why do people think that? I've done videos on this, and people get irate, and they go, Steve, the FAA owns the airspace over your property. Well, then can I build a 2-story house? Well, obviously you can. Well, isn't that building into the FAA's airspace? How? And they go, well, 400 feet. Oh, so that's why there's no buildings in America above 400 feet. Okay, cool, I got that. I've always wondered that. No, the FAA regulates airspace. They don't own airspace. 2 different words, regulate and own. 2 different concepts. The NHTSA regulates cars. Who owns your car? Oh, NHTSA does. They regulate it. No. You own your car, but it was built to NHTSA regulations. Regulations. The FAA regulates the airspace. So because they regulate it, they can't give permission to the police and say, oh, so following this guy's logic, if you have a privacy fence around your property, 10-foot tall privacy fence, let's assume that zoning allows that, 10-foot tall privacy fence around your property. He's saying that the government can bring in 20 drones, 100 drones, and bring them into your property 8 feet high, right above your head, and just leave it there. It can just sit there and watch you all day long. As you move around, it just watches you. Nothing you can do about it because it's an FAA-owned airspace. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Steve, you're making that an absurd example. That's not fair. Oh, no, actually it is. Actually it is. Because if the law is, as this guy says it is, the government could actually overfly your property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with an army of drones. And actually, since they own the airspace, they could be hovering around ankle high, right above your head. They could come over and peer in your windows. They can do all that stuff because they own the airspace. There's nothing you can do about it. The U.S. Supreme Court's already ruled on that. And he sent me a bunch of cases he wanted me to look at. And I read the first one. I forgot the name of it, but it's a famous case that I actually read in law school, which he would have read if he'd gone to law school, but he wasn't an attorney. And in that original case, somebody narked out some people and said, hey, these people are growing marijuana out on their property. Big piece of property, they're growing marijuana out in the property. And so the police went and flew over the house at a couple thousand feet. And they looked down and said, oh, that looks like marijuana. You can see that from space. So then they went and searched. And they tried to block that action by saying the police can't fly over your property at a couple thousand feet and look down. And the Supreme Court said, why not? Everyone else does. I mean, that's basically plain view. But they also said this open field stuff. Remember, the Fourth Amendment talks about protecting you in your home and your belongings and so on. The field out behind your property is not your home. It's not your person. It's not your papers and things and effects. Okay? So that's the distinction there. But if I've got a house with a backyard with a fence around it, and you're flying a drone over 8 feet, you better believe that's a violation of something. But again, since the FAA owns the airspace over your property, the government can hover a drone over your property all day long without a warrant, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there you go. I didn't actually have any more correspondence with that gentleman, but I often like to ask people who say things like that so confidently. I say, well, what state are you licensed to practice law in, and how long have you been practicing? We'll just discuss this because I want to just make sure that you're not like a young attorney versus somebody who's been practicing law for 40 years. And they always come back and they say, oh, I'm not an attorney. And ironically, and by the way, I'm going to ruin my streak by saying this, I suspect, but I'm going to say it anyways. But just so you know that in my 8 years of putting videos up on YouTube, I don't think I've ever had an attorney contact me and say, by the way, Steve, I am an attorney, and I think you got that wrong. It's always the non-attorneys who have poked around on Wikipedia a little bit and then say, oh, you got this wrong because you didn't know about this case. Or the guy who said that the courts you talk about got that wrong because the Supreme Court said something. The Supreme Court was one of the courts we were citing in that story. So do you think that the Supreme Court got something wrong with how they ruled? I mean, they're allowed to reverse themselves, but I don't think they've done that just yet. So that's the crazy part about the drone and the search in Michigan and all that stuff. But again, you are wrong in everything you said, and so are the courts that you referenced there. So that's going to wrap it up for this Mish Mosh Friday. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.